me, heading home from 4-day weekend camping trip. Driving down rural country highway. Late evening, sun is just setting over horizon. Really need to piss. 205 miles to next town. Lots of hills and twists in this weird area. Basically a farm road, so it's barely car drivable in this stretch. Finally find a flat spot to pull over because I'm not psycho enough to stop in the road out here. No other lights for at least 20 miles. Sky is super clear. Piss over guardrail into creek bed. Finish up and all other sounds have stopped. All back runs tense. Hair stand up. Faint whistling above me. A smeared oval silhouette crossed a few stars in my vision. Duck in a car quick. Something slams into roof and starts rocking the car as I'm starting it. Pedal to the metal in my piece of shit Honda Element. Something screeches. Can't tell if it's my transmission or a fucking Thunderbird. The rocking stops after about 30 seconds. Drive like a wannabe rally car until I see a gas station with other humans. My front roof rack bar is missing. The gas station guy at least let me sleep parked under the carport that night. I was shook as fuck. From an outdoor hunting website that had a creepy experiences thread. On the trip in question, I decided to hike the old Malala Indian Trail that followed the ridge tops from Saddle Blanket Mountain to Oak Ridge, one of the Native Americans' favorite summer camps and trading centers. It was a beautiful August day, 2 days into the hike. I expected to be gone about 2 weeks, when literally, out of the blue, the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me in my life occurred. It would change my perspective of reality forever. I was walking along the trail enjoying the strong breeze and bright sunshine when, in the middle of a step, everything around me started turning gray and blurry. The only way I can describe it was as if suddenly I was looking through someone else's prescription sunglasses. I finished the step and started another. Every inch I moved forward, the darkness increased and the gray blurring turned into a jumble of shapes that made no sense. I then seemed to pass a barrier and everything started to return back into focus. When my foot reached the ground on the second step, everything around me had changed. Day had turned into night, and there was no wind. All the Douglas fir and pine trees had been replaced with thick jungle-like growth. The cool, thin mountain air was replaced with humid, thick air. There were no stars in the sky, but there was a diffused light that let me see everything clearly. However, I couldn't tell what the light source was. As often happens when the human body receives a massive dose of adrenaline, the entire incident appeared like it was in slow motion, and even though I was only there for a second or two, I had time to observe my surroundings. The silence was broken by a continuous high-pitched keening sound, and I was nearly overwhelmed with a sense of fear and danger. My momentum caused me to take one more step before stopping in my tracks. It was at this point I heard a whispered, "Gotcha," over my right shoulder. I couldn't tell if I heard it with my ears or inside my head. The word wasn't directed at me, but something said the word quietly for itself. I was so terrified, I actually felt my heart stop for a moment. That whispered word is what saved me. I opened my mouth and gasped in a huge gush of thick air and recoiled backward in the same footsteps I had entered wherever I was. As I threw myself backward, I looked over my right shoulder. A dark-colored, hairy right hand and arm was reaching for my throat over my shoulder. The hand had pale ivory spade-shaped fingernails. The nails looked clean and almost had a manicured look to them. The thumb was placed lower, towards the wrist, on the hand than a human's is. Both hand and arm were thin and powerful looking, and both were covered with thick, coarse black hair. I got a good look at it because the thumbnail grazed my neck. It did not break the skin as I moved backwards. As I continued backwards, the hand clutched where my neck had been a split second before, and it seemed to fade off into the distance as I returned through the portal. I took 2 more steps backwards, and everything reversed itself from what had just happened. The world around me became lighter. The fir and pines gradually came back into view, and by the 3rd step, I was back on Saddle Blanket Mountain. I continued to move backwards in terror, and as I did, I observed that where I had just come from was a shimmering oval patch of air about the size of a large door. The woods behind it looked like it was underwater. By the fifth backward step, the shimmering area just seemed to evaporate, and everything was back to normal. By then, my lungs had nearly burst from the volume of air I had inhaled during the huge gasp I had just taken. My body felt like it was on fire from the adrenaline surge. I spun around and ran back down the trail as fast as my legs could carry me, and didn't stop until I reached my truck. I was nearly 2 days getting to that place, and about 3 hours getting back. On my way home, I was absolutely horrified at the thought of what would happen if I were to drive my truck into something like that. It had been a trap, pure and simple. Whatever it was that tried to kill me somehow kept the portal hidden from me on the way in, and I didn't actually see it until I was back out again. I had terrible nightmares for years, and still haven't come to grips with what happened. My fingers are trembling, and the hair is standing up on the nape of my neck as I write this. Severely shaken, I've read everything I could get my hands on about people who have mysteriously disappeared throughout history, and discovered several instances where people have vanished in plain sight of others. The quantum physics people have a theory about parallel universes. They just might be right. Since I originally wrote this, Report 9202 from Sutter County, California was submitted to the BFRO. The person who submitted the report drew a picture of a creature he saw in a tree. The right hand in the picture is exactly the same as the one I saw. Note the thumb placement. And the forearm of the left arm is exactly like the forearm of the creature that attacked me. Be me, 25 years old, Latin American guy, on a bullshit spiritual journey, traveling alone across Patagonia. Gets snowy, stuck on a god-forgotten highway, hitchhiking without any success. 5 p.m., getting darker, hungry and thirsty as fuck. Start to worry about having to sleep in a frozen ditch on the side of the road. A couple of lights appear in my direction. Make the thumbs up signal with a friendly face. Car stops.
Hey there, where are you heading? Next town. Oh, I'm heading to my villa, Traful. It's a beautiful destination if you're traveling. It's a must-see.
Never heard of it, but don't have much choice.jpg. Jump in the car. Guy's in his 40s. Pretty messy look. Starts to tell me how this villa is paradise on earth. Tells me the story of how he left everything in the city to move there. Opens a small convenience store. Tells me about it with a smile on his face the entire time. Get there. 200 people villa. Mountains, lake, and enormous wood all around the 5-block town. The most beautiful landscape you can imagine. Crystal lakes and snowy mountains. Lord of the Rings kind of shit. Guy starts to say hello to every single person we come across in town. Every single one is happy, joyful, and greeting each other. They are so nice with me. Get myself in a free camping area. Nobody is there. Start to feel a weird atmosphere. The woods are silent, and I can't sleep. Full moon. For some reason, it's getting hotter in my tent. It's winter in the south. What the fuck, .rar. Next morning, I head to the store of the guy who picked me up. I start to look at the lampposts along the dirt roads. Full of signs of missing people in every language. German, Spanish, English. Every single one was a hitchhiker like me. Start to have an eerie feeling and a pretty bad vibe. I arrive at the convenience store because I was broken hungry. Looking for donation.gif. Guy asked me if I had the chance to hike through the woods. Tell him that I have to keep going to the next town. Suddenly, his face went off. Becomes furious out of nowhere and asks me why in the hell I want to come here if I didn't want to stay.
If I had known you would leave so soon, I would have never picked you up. Mr. Traful would not like this.
His face was transformed, almost with hate. Nope the fuck out of that weird town. He screams I have to walk if I want to exit. 4-hour hike through the dirt roads out of the villa. Get to the main highway. I am 100% convinced that I escaped a cult villa, Or some twisted shit. Be me, 17 years old, visiting family in rural Canada. Uncle tells me about local legends. Says Wendigo sightings aren't uncommon in the area. Laugh it off as old folklore. Decide to go camping alone in the woods for the thrill. Pitch tent near a small clearing. Night falls. Sitting by campfire. Hear distant howling. Sounds like it's getting closer. Brush it off. Probably just wolves. Fire starts dying down. Get up to gather more wood. Feel like I'm being watched. Hear twigs snapping behind me. Turn around. Nothing there. Get back to campfire. Something feels off. Notice the woods are completely silent now. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Suddenly, a foul stench hits my nose. Smells like rotting meat. Hear a low growl. Look up and see it. Tall, emaciated figure, lurking at the edge of the clearing. Eyes glowing in the darkness. Its skin looks like it's stretched over bone, gaunt and sickly. Antlers protruding from its head. Realize it's a Wendigo. Heart starts racing, frozen in fear. It steps closer, its breath visible in the cold air. Snap out of it, grab my flashlight, and shine it at the creature. It screeches and retreats into the woods. Pack up camp in record time, sprint back to my car. Drive back to Uncle's place, heart pounding. Tell him what happened. He nods knowingly.
You saw it, didn't ya? The Wendigo.
Never go camping in those woods again. Still have nightmares about that night. Uncle tells me Wendigo only appear to those who are truly alone. Never going solo camping ever again. My face went. The legend was true all along. I decided to escape the stress of city life by camping solo near Shadow Mountain Lake in Colorado. It was a secluded spot, surrounded by dense forest and towering mountains. I set up camp by the lake, got a nice fire going, and felt at peace with nature. As night fell, the sky filled with stars, and everything seemed calm and serene. While sitting by the fire, roasting marshmallows and enjoying the silence, I heard rustling in the bushes. At first, I thought it was a deer or a raccoon, but the noises grew closer, sending a chill down my spine. I peered into the darkness beyond the firelight, catching a glimpse of a shadowy figure lurking just outside the circle of light. The figure stepped closer, barely visible, but I could make out a gaunt, twisted form with elongated limbs. The creature had a haunting, evil smirk, and its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Suddenly, I found myself unable to move or speak, as if an invisible force was holding me in place. Everything around me began to warp and twist, the firelight turning into swirling colors. I felt like I was being sucked through a tunnel, disoriented and terrified. When I landed, I found myself in a distorted version of my campsite. The trees were twisted, the sky an eerie green, and the air felt thick and oppressive. I realized I was in some kind of pocket dimension. The creature was there, still smirking, its eyes glowing brighter.
Welcome to my domain,
It said, its voice echoing in a way that made my skin crawl. The details of what happened next are a blur. I remember flashes of running through the twisted forest, with the creature's eerie laughter following me. Somehow, I found a way back. One moment, I was in the twisted dimension, and the next, I was back at my campsite. Dawn was breaking, and I must have been gone all night. The last thing I remembered was the creature's voice as I escaped.
Next time, bring some snacks.
I couldn't tell if it was a joke or a threat. I packed up and got out of there as fast as I could, vowing never to return to those woods. I still have nightmares about that twisted forest and the creature's haunting smirk. When I told my friends, they thought I'd just had a bad trip. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Either way, I won't be going solo camping again anytime soon.